rotary compost bin is certainly giving me my exercise. It was a bit wet this morning and pretty hard to push, but it seems to be working out. Well, the potatoes were a great success, so I'm going to have a few more. And what was interesting was that the top layer of compost in these pots had quite a few slugs' eggs in. So I think it's a case of getting the potatoes out before they start to take damage. I like to give the vegetables as much of a clean off as I can before taking them home, and the water butts just come in really handy for this. So I use a sieve, let the soil drain to the bottom, and they're good to go. So I'm going to keep this compost for next year and continue with my recycling of compost. And hopefully this year's potatoes will show that to have been successful, and this will be an investment in the next year. Well, it's time to pick some broad beans, and I've been weighing up whether to pull out the whole plant and crop the beans that are on it, or just pick the larger ones. And in the end I opted for just picking the larger ones, and we'll see if the smaller ones come on. Hopefully that way we'll get more mature beans and more to eat. Well, the rocket truly went to seed, and I'm just going to crop it and see if I can get a new flush of leaves, but not very successful. The high winds we've been having have been playing havoc with the runner beans, and I've been re-twisting their stems around these canes for the last week or so, and unfortunately high winds are forecast again for this weekend. But we'll keep at it, and hopefully they'll get a firm grip and give us a good crop. Now Mrs. K has been making raspberry and red currant jelly, and I've got to say it's delicious. So every time I get a chance, I'm back on the raspberries, and every time we seem to crop them, The next morning there's a whole nother flush. So we're certainly enjoying plenty of raspberries this season. Well, that wasn't a bad haul. Some raspberries, some potatoes, and of course the broad beans. True to form, the goldfinches have polished off another whole feeder full of sunflower seed, so time to top it up again. The tomatoes have gained a little bit more height, and I felt like I needed to tie them in again, just keep on top of it. And looking at the foliage, there's quite a lot of foliage on these plants, and I've decided to strip a bit more off, and I want all the energy to go into growing those fruit rather than into the leaves. So hopefully this will be a successful strategy. The beefsteak tomatoes are far bushier than the others, and I think it's because the pots are that much larger. So, like the others, I'm going to take some leaves out of here and just make sure that they're tied up nice and secure. The last of the bolted lettuce are coming out now, and the new lettuce that I've put into the bed are starting to perform quite well, and soon we'll be having salad from those new lettuce leaves. The size of the black currants this year have really impressed me, and this is our first picking of the black currants, and we'll be making blackcurrant jelly out of that. Or at least Mrs. K will. Well, it's time to remove the surplus apples. The idea is that if we take apples out of clusters, then it'll leave singular apples that grow that much bigger and hopefully are nicer to eat. Certainly last year there were far too many small apples, so let's hope this is successful. Weeding of these beds really isn't a big problem, but if you keep on top of it, then it makes it a far more manageable task. Each of these beds took me 5 or 10 minutes just to make sure that I didn't have the dreaded mare's tail growing everywhere and a few other weeds that had taken root. All in all, pretty straightforward. I took out a broccoli here which really wasn't performing very well, and I've got quite a few swede in the polytunnel to move out and get into the ground, so I'm just going to pop one in the hole and see if we can make use of the space. The beetroot bed pretty much weeded through. Now onto the swede bed. I've got a few spring onions in here and everything's growing well, and there's not too many weeds, but I've got a couple of spaces down the end and I think I'll pop a few more of those swede into that space. This time of year it's best to make good use of all the space that you've got. The growing weather is really good. Parsnip bed only had enough seedlings to go 2/3 of the way down the bed, so I finished it off with this broccoli. 2 or 3 of the plants just seem to have wilted, so I'm going to pull those out and use the space, make sure that all those swede have got a good home to go to. So while I'm on the weeding run, I thought I'd just make sure there's nothing in these runner beans. And of course I've got the leeks sown in between these poles, and there wasn't a great deal, but it's good to keep on top of it. Now, I've had a lot of great advice as to how to deal with these aubergines, so I've adopted the method that leaves just a couple of strong shoots, and I make sure that they're staked well and tied in, and then removing all the extra shoots, and where it's practical to do so, take some of the extra foliage out. It leaves well, a less bushy plant, and hopefully that means, like the tomatoes, the energy is going into growing the fruit rather than feeding those leaves. So it's feeding time at the polytunnel. So I use a proprietary tomato feed and give all the tomatoes and the peppers a good feed. I do this twice a week. It's a fairly weak solution, but the balance seems to be about right. Fingers crossed, we'll get plenty of fruit on the trusses. I do hope you enjoyed the video today. If you did, click the subscribe button, click the like button, and if you want updates from me each time I upload a video, click the bell and select all. I do hope you have a great day. Diolch yn fawr.